quick question, did you ever start an arrangement and somehow it didn't sound so interesting, so engaging, so nicely flowing like your idols one, you know, the producers you look up to? Maybe you wondered, okay, how can I make it better sounding? How can I improve it? And maybe you ended up adding track after track, new sound after new sound, but ended up in a big mess. There was no flow, but it was more overwhelming instead of a nicely flowing arrangement. If this is the case to you, it was certainly for me from time to time still, right? Honestly. But I want to share 3 techniques that you can use, very simple techniques that you can use to spice up your arrangement without adding any new audio channels, right? So you don't add a synth line, you don't add anything new in order of sound source, but rather improving what is already in there, right? But honestly, here's the thing, oftentimes it doesn't require magical tools to make an arrangement make sound a little bit more complex, a little bit more professional, a little bit more flowing, but rather simple tips and tricks. God damn it. Hey friends, we want to hear from RuffinStudio.com. So an arrangement is basically based on tension and release, right? Or put into other words, it's based on contrast, right? So if you face some problems inside the arrangement phase, it's probably because there is too little contrast between the different sections. Maybe yeah, there are different reasons, right? But the main thing, if arrangement is not flowing, I found it's basically because the tension and release is not enough there. But there is a sweet spot, right? Sometimes it can be too big, but also too small is also not good, right? So with today's 3 simple techniques, we don't go too far away, but we also don't stay too close, right? So the contrast is just right, I would say, because if you would eat pizza every day for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner, you would probably, on some level, you will burn out of pizza, right? If you would eat the same shit over and over 3 times a day, on some level you would hate it, right? If you hear the same drum loop over and over, on some level we hate it. It's a natural thing, right? That can happen. So what we are going to do for this week's video is basically we tweak what is already there inside your arrangement and adding things that you can feel but not necessarily hear in the first place, right? Because I found that's the key to a great arrangement, adding things to your track that you can feel but not hear, right? I got this from Massimo Girardi. He was an A&R from Memoria Recordings. He taught me that and it's stuck to me since then. It's probably 10 years ago or more, but since then it stuck to me in my mind, and I still adapt this mindset whenever I can, right? Now before we start, I quickly want to mention my little soft but snappy Rominimal Ableton Live kick template. Basically this is a drag and drop tool that I came up with. It's also a very simple tool, but I think it's a very powerful tool because you can design your very own kick. Oftentimes I found the kick doesn't fit into the track anymore so nicely whenever I add a new kind of sound. Maybe it's a bass line, maybe a pad, or maybe textures. Sometimes I need to change the direction, and oftentimes tweaking the kick a little bit often helps a lot, you know, or even changing the vibe a little bit, pitching it a little bit down, adding a little tick on top or whatever you need. This tool got you covered. It's a basic tool that is based on Max for Live device. If you have Ableton Suite, this works for you, and yeah, go and grab it. It's for free, of course. Just click the link on this side and then you get it shipped to your inbox. Now let's jump into this week's video and hopefully you will like it. Hopefully it's inspiring. Let's jump in. Alright, so for this week's video I experimented a little bit with some tiny changes inside the arrangement to make it a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more interesting and whatnot, right? Let's have a quick listen to the track here. Now I do 2 channels, I mute 2 channels, and then I explain what's going on. Listen closely. Now it's muted. Bypass, sorry. In again, out, in. Okay, so let's talk about 3 examples how you can spice up your arrangement a little bit. So first thing is really simple. Honestly, what I always did was taking out hi-hats, you know, bringing them in and out. But for this experimentation, instead of taking them out, basically muting them, I simply shortened them, right? So they are still inside the track, but because they are short, they are not so obvious anymore inside the arrangement, right? So it's not so drastic, kind of. Let's have a listen. Right, very short and without it, very drastic, but like this, it's not so obvious in my opinion, you know. It's still there kind of, but it's also not muted, so this will be muted. Could also work, maybe as another version, right? And then bringing it back in, right? And then bringing in or making it decay longer again, right? Right? So you can make the arrangement really dynamic. If we just use this simple little trick, it's, in my opinion, it's so simple but so powerful. Oftentimes, small little things, simple things, oftentimes have a big impact. So let's have a listen again. Context. Right, so this is the first technique, playing with a simple decay of in that case open hat from a TR-909. In my case it's Rolling Cloud. It's a great little tool in my opinion for some old school classic sound. And a little note here, you have under options, you have sub output. So basically you can then run those tracks here inside Ableton with individual tracks, right? You just hit TR-909 and then you put the sub out according to the plugin. But if you have any questions how to route this correctly, let me know in the comment section and I'm glad to help you out. It's basically really simple. You can also find it in the manual. That's where I found it, so it's really straightforward but very helpful. So yeah, this is first technique, open hi-hat, playing with the decay, making your arrangement a little bit more dynamic. Rather than simply muting the hi-hat, you can shorten it. Now the second thing is a little bit more complicated in a sense. As you can see, I have a clap running here again from TR909. Right, without crazy effects on it, but then I added a reverb. And if you listen very closely, the reverb is not sounding exactly the same every time the clap hits, right? Let's have a listen again. Very subtle in the background, but in my opinion it can have a big impact throughout the arrangement. Some small hidden bits and pieces make really a track shine, in my opinion, and yeah, make it sound more professional, I would say, even, you know. So let's have a listen without the LFO. So basically, to explain the concept here, I added a simple reverb here, and then I assigned LFO to the size, right? So I played around with the size here a little bit, and then I thought, okay, what if I can automate that with the LFO and make it kind of random, you know? So I set the minimum value and the maximum value, so it doesn't get too long, but also not too short. So let's have a quick example listening here. If I would bring that maximum up, we would get very long reverb tail now and then, right? We can totally do that if we want to. And if I go down here, it gets really dry. But again, I don't want it to be too obvious in this scenario. Just one subtle change. So I keep it down, then I play around with the rate a little bit. You can also play with very short rates here if you want to, right? It's a taste thing. That doesn't work. But 1 bar. So we get a few clap hits and then it changes it, right? To make it more audible, the impact of this little LFO, let's add a little bit more of that reverb into this track. Without it. You could also experiment with some other parameters here. Let's play with the tail actually. context. Now let's just take out the LFO and see if we hear any change here. Listen to the clap. Now it should stay the same values, right? LFO. We get certainly some variation here and there in a very subtle way. It's almost not audible, but it's there, right? And one thing that I learned was from Massimo Girardi. He was the former A&R from Memoria Recordings. Once said to me, you need to add things to your track that you can feel but not hear, and that's exactly, I think, what he meant. So you can not exactly hear it, but it's there, right? Something that changes in the background. It's not obvious, it's not really audible, but you can feel it somehow, right? Now let's quickly mute again this chain with the reverb and the LFO plus this chain here on the closed heads. I didn't even explain that, right? I explain it to you in a minute. This is muted. Dry, wet. Now let's check out this little hi-hat that I talked about. Again, what we did here was first technique, just simply playing with the decay of the hi-hat, right, with the length to create some impact here and there. Now the second thing what I did was here using an envelope plus a reverb, and this is a stock plugin reverb. And instead of using an envelope, instead of using an LFO like we did on the clap, for this time we basically use an envelope follower, right? So basically this reacts based on the audio input, right? As you can see here, every time we get the input from this hi-hat, we get a little envelope here, right? Now with that envelope we can actually control different things from this reverb, right? Very simple. Basically it works like an LFO, but it reacts to audio, right? And basically transforms that audio into something controllable if we break it really down, if I would explain it in a very basic way. Mute that quickly and then I explain you how I actually did it, what I automated and what not, just so you can hear the difference. This is static, this is dynamic, also adds more groove, I would say. And fills up the gap a little bit, right? Context again. Out the envelope. Let's fill up the gaps. Right, now let's look into this little envelope follower technique here. Now what I assigned here was the stereo image, the size, and also dry wet, right? So let's have a listen in solo here. And I also played with the delay. Without delay. But you can hear if I add more delay, I get somehow more kind of groove, right? I like this one, this setting here. There is really no rule about this. I simply do it by ear and how I like it. That's how I think it should be, right? Listen, and also listen to your gut feeling. If it feels right to you, if it fits your taste, run with it. Who cares, you know? Sometimes I even close my eyes and really hone in and listen to the audio and try to feel what feels right for a certain setting, right? Also like this setting, as you can hear, as you can see here, we have the envelope triggering stereo, size, and dry wet. And again, we can choose the minimum setting and the maximum, right? So we can go all crazy up here, but I want it a little bit more subtle. And all what I'm doing here is really listen. Just listen and tweak a little bit, you know, and see what I like. Try. Filling the gaps. Yeah, really simple. To sum it up again, number one, simply play with the decay of the hi-hat, right? With an open hat in my case, from a 909 Roland TR 909. Very simple. Instead of muting it, I really turn that decay really short, so we still have this right, but it's not completely gone. Then second thing is clap, adding a reverb and then assigning different parameters to an LFO in random setting, right? And you choose the values here, whatever you like. You also choose what you want to control. It's open to experimentation. Yeah, it's up to you, you know. I'm just here to inspire you, and then you take it further. So you get tiny little changes in the background, so it gets a little bit more dynamic sounding. And then on the closed head, instead of using an LFO to control the parameters, we use an envelope follower, so it gets a little bit more dynamic whenever the audio signal hits, right? And you choose again the different parameters that you like and experiment. And yeah, I hope this is inspiring. Hope this helps a little bit to spice up your arrangement in a very subtle way. I found it's very fun and very easy to do so. And now it's your turn. Maybe try out simple things like open hi-hat, playing with the decay to make a little bit impact. Maybe you found your arrangement sounds a little bit boring. Maybe try playing around with the decay first, then maybe with the LFO and reverb and whatnot, and finally with envelope follower, and going experiment, have fun. And yeah, hope to see another video. Thanks for watching, thanks for your time, this means a lot to me. And yeah, hope to see you in next week's video. Cheers. And yeah, by the way, don't forget to download the free soft but snappy Rominimal Ableton live kick template, so you can make custom kicks inside Ableton Live for your projects. So yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching, thanks for your time, see you next week. Cheers, bye bye.